He said it casually, almost like a joke. "My dad works at NASA." The room erupted in laughter, pointing fingers, whispering behind his back. He smiled nervously, trying to ignore it, hoping they'd stop, but then, a shadow appeared at the doorway. The laughter froze, whispers died, every eye turned, hearts pounding. Breaths caught. No one could believe what they were seeing. Who was this man walking toward the classroom, and why did his presence make everyone suddenly silent, as if the entire truth had just arrived? In that moment, everything changed, and no one would ever forget it. It was a bright Tuesday morning, and Jamal was just another face in a crowded classroom. Smart, quiet, and always polite, he had grown used to blending in, to keeping his head down, and letting others take the spotlight. His world revolved around homework, basketball after school, and weekend visits to his father, who worked tirelessly in a field most kids only dreamed about. NASA wasn't just a workplace, it was a world of rockets, stars, and possibilities, a place that filled Jamal with pride every time he spoke about it. That day, a casual comment slipped from his lips, innocent in his eyes, proud in his heart. "My dad works at NASA." He didn't expect the reaction that followed. Laughter erupted around him, sharp and cutting, echoing in his ears. Faces twisted in disbelief, some sneering, some mocking. Jamal forced a smile, pretending it didn't hurt, but inside, a knot tightened in his chest. He couldn't understand why telling the truth felt so wrong, why being proud of his father made others angry, or worse, dismissive. As he tried to shrink back into his chair, unaware that all eyes were still on him, a subtle tension began to build. Something was about to happen, something that would make every snicker and whisper in that room feel insignificant in comparison. The air felt heavier, the classroom smaller, and Jamal sensed, without fully understanding, that his world was about to shift in a way he had never imagined. The laughter didn't stop. It grew louder, sharper, more relentless, echoing off the classroom walls like a tide pushing him further into shame. Jamal tried to focus on his notebook, fingers trembling over the pages, but he couldn't escape the weight of every mocking glance, every whispered joke aimed at him. The words, "NASA," and "liar," collided in his mind, twisting pride into embarrassment. He wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor, but the room held him captive, and every second stretched longer than the last. A few students stood, pointing, murmuring to each other, smirking as if daring someone to question them. Jamal's chest tightened. He felt the eyes of his classmates burn into him, curiosity, disbelief, and something darker lurking beneath the surface. No one had spoken a word yet about why his father's accomplishments seemed to make them uncomfortable, why the truth about his life felt like a provocation. Yet he could feel the tension building, a storm gathering, invisible but undeniable. Then the door creaked. The sound sliced through the laughter, a sudden, sharp interruption that froze everyone in place. Jamal's heart jumped, adrenaline rushing through him in a way that made his thoughts scatter. The laughter faded into silence, replaced by a heavy, expectant pause. He dared to glance toward the doorway. There he was, a man, tall, composed, radiating authority, stepping into the room with a presence that demanded attention. Jamal's father. His gaze swept across the classroom, slow and deliberate, and in that instant, every sneer and chuckle faltered. The air felt charged, thick with anticipation. Something unspoken had shifted. Some students shifted in their seats, unsure how to respond. Others tried to hide smirks, but the intimidation in his father's stance left no room for ridicule. The tension was electric, almost unbearable, as if the classroom itself were holding its breath. Jamal felt a flicker of relief, but it was tangled with fear. He knew the world could be cruel, and he knew too well that admiration or achievement didn't protect him from the subtle, pervasive biases that had followed him his entire life. His father's eyes met Jamal's briefly, a silent signal of reassurance and understanding. Yet the silence in the room stretched longer than any word could have. The classroom had become a stage, the laughter replaced by anticipation, judgment, and the looming question of what would happen next. Jamal's pulse raced. He felt the weight of every moment he had ever been underestimated, every time someone assumed he was less capable because of the color of his skin. Now, with his father standing there, the embodiment of his truth and achievement, the room seemed to teeter on the edge of revelation or disaster. No one knew how to move, and in that moment, Jamal realized that what came next would define him in a way nothing else ever could. Because the world was watching, even in that small classroom, and every reaction mattered. The room was silent, but the tension felt suffocating, as if the walls themselves were pressing in. Jamal's classmates stared, wide-eyed, caught between disbelief and fear, while whispers hovered on the edge of lips that dared not speak. His father took a slow step forward, each movement deliberate, commanding attention without raising his voice. The man wasn't just a father in that moment. He was a force, a living testament to achievement, dignity, and resilience. Some students shifted uncomfortably, Glances darting nervously around the room, one boy's smirk faltered, then vanished entirely, replaced by a mix of awe and shame. Jamal's chest tightened. He had feared ridicule, confrontation, even dismissal, but nothing had prepared him for the raw, electric weight of recognition, of the truth hitting every person in the room at once. Then, without warning, a voice from the back muttered, half in disbelief, half in anger, "No way, your dad." Heads turned sharply, eyes narrowing, jaws tightening. The laughter had completely evaporated, replaced by stunned silence and an undercurrent of tension that could have snapped at any moment. Jamal's heart pounded. Every ounce of pride he had ever felt collided with fear, fear of judgment, fear of resentment, fear of the unspoken biases that could surface at any second. His father's gaze swept across the classroom again, landing on Jamal, steady, reassuring, almost defiant. No words were necessary. The presence of this man, the truth of what he represented, was enough to shift the dynamic entirely. And yet, the room still simmered with unspoken questions, unprocessed assumptions, and a tension so raw it hurt to breathe. Jamal realized in that instant that this wasn't just about him, or about the laughter that had echoed across the classroom minutes ago. It was about every time someone had been underestimated, every time achievement had been doubted, every time the color of skin had drawn invisible lines that shouldn't exist. The moment stretched, unbearable and electric, until the entire class held its breath, waiting for what would happen next. And in that stillness, one thought flashed through Jamal's mind, one thought that could change everything. The world was watching, and now it could no longer look away. The silence lingered, thick and heavy, until the teacher finally stepped forward, attempting to fill the void with words that now seemed almost trivial. Jamal's classmates slowly returned to their seats, their expressions a mix of shame, awe, and reluctant respect. The laughter had vanished, replaced by a quiet understanding that some truths cannot be ignored. Jamal exhaled, relief mingling with a strange sense of empowerment. For the first time, he realized that pride in who he was, and in his family, was not something to hide, no matter how uncomfortable it made others. His father stayed for only a few minutes, but those moments left a lasting impression. Every gesture, every measured word, every glance carried a message louder than any lecture. Dignity, achievement, and resilience cannot be erased by ignorance or prejudice. Jamal walked home that day with a heart lighter than it had been in years, yet heavier with awareness. He understood now that the laughter, the disbelief, and even the lingering tension were not just about him. They were a mirror reflecting the biases that persist in classrooms, workplaces, and communities everywhere. This was more than a personal victory, it was a small but meaningful confrontation with a broader truth. Racism, subtle or overt, thrives when it goes unchallenged. When achievement, pride, and identity are questioned because of skin color, society loses, not just the individual, but the potential and promise that person carries. Jamal's story was a reminder. Standing tall in the face of prejudice is not just an act of courage, it's a step toward reshaping perceptions and demanding recognition for what is rightfully ours. As he looked back on the classroom, Jamal knew this moment would stay with him forever. The laughter had ended, but the lessons remained. Prejudice can be confronted, dignity can prevail, and every individual has the power to challenge the assumptions that try to define them. The question lingers, and it's one we must all answer. How many times will society allow ignorance to silence truth before we finally stand up together?